Welcome everybody to Beers with Bill. It is my pleasure to welcome back Adam Wilson. And Adam, it's always great to share a conversation with you. So we're starting with New Limburg. You want to talk a little bit about that?
I do. One thing I do want to say is part of what I'm doing tonight is part of the how I decided on the beers that I wanted to do were summer beers that were all available at the LCBO, and none of the bigger breweries. I figured that the bigger guys can take care of themselves, and they get plenty of conversation. So I think it's for me it was time to focus a little bit on some of the medium to smaller guys that are available. Whether they're available in all stores or not, I'm not sure. So I do apologize if you guys couldn't get your hands on all of them. It's nice to see some familiar faces tonight. But yeah, so New Limburg, starting with their Belgian blonde. New Limburg is based out of Scotland, Ontario, which is just outside of Simcoe, and it's in an old schoolhouse. If you haven't been down, it's so cool. Like they took an old elementary school, they turned the gymnasium into a brewery, and their tap room is one of the classrooms. And then they took the old schoolyard and out back and have the most beautiful patio. Like it's so cool. It's in the middle of nowhere. Their business model is ridiculous. Like I don't know how they managed to do it, but what they did was, so it was it's a family affair. It's Joe, and I don't know Joe's last name, and Joe decided to get this thing started with his son Misha, and Misha is a hell of a fine brewer. He's a younger guy. We're going to see him a couple of times here tonight with these beers, and so the New Limburg Belgium ale, when it hit the market, everybody was shocked at how good it was. Finding a good Belgian style beer is a bit difficult in Canada. There's not a lot of guys that can do it really well. Dagrag out in BC is one of them that does it exceptionally well. And Jordan St. John has done a lot of comparisons between New Limburg and Dageraat. So it's always nice to hear that, especially from a local flavor that's like 15 minutes down the road. One of the first things that I find, and by the way, every single one of my beers tonight is going to be in a mason jar, only because of the fact that how else do you drink beer in the summertime? I can get behind that. So I find that the first smell of any Belgian blonde is this big bubblegum sense to the nose, and you get that sweetness right away. But I find that it's not so. Belgian blondes, the blondes were kind of late to the game in Belgium, because they were really big on their ales, and they were really big on their darker ales especially. So when lagers started hitting England and Germany, and Belgians were just like, we'll take our time getting there. But when they did, they made a hell of a mark on the world with it. And there's no one real style to it. Some of them are hoppy, some of them are a little bit sweeter, and I find that the New Limburg version has that nice sweetness to it without being cloyingly sweet. So, and the main flavor kind of comes from the yeast. Typically, you're looking at your hops and your malts doing a bit of a battle, but in most Belgian beers, you've got that yeast profile that really jumps out. So, cheers, everyone.
Cheers. So you've had an interesting 6 months.
Have I ever? Have I ever?
What's been the hardest hurdle to overcome during COVID?
Apparently keeping a job. It seems to be what the big one is. So to your point, you guys might remember, you might not. I worked for Bose for about 4 years with our man Keith. I'm glad to see his name on the screen, if not his beautiful face. You
don't want to see this face.
Back in October, I had an opportunity to become the sales director for Boshkung. Brewing up in Minden, and that's when I first met you guys. Was when I first started up with them. Um, Unfortunately, as of last week, I'm no longer with them. They have decided that instead of the bigger picture of the provincial spread, they're going to focus on their regionality right now and really tighten things up at home. And you know, it's you know. If there's one thing that's consistent in this industry, is the inconsistency of it. It's you know, there's 400 breweries in this province, and most of them are smaller breweries, and you know, there's always the financial you know, problems that come with being a smaller brewery with high capital costs, and throw in a pandemic that's lasted for a year and a half, and you know, stuff happens. So yeah, that's I guess to answer your question, yeah, keeping a job. That's I'm being a free agent again.
I gotta say, you're talking about the romance of being a brewery owner, all that fun, all that stress.
Yeah, no, it's you know, I wouldn't wish it on anyone, to be honest with you. It's you know, it's a phenomenal industry. I love it. I love every bit of it. But to be a brewery owner, I'm glad I'm not. You know, it's a tough game, especially right now. And I mean, and everybody's feeling it. I don't care whether you're as big as Bose or Steam Whistle, or you know, or as small as someone said New Lindbergh. Like the trying to find ways to get beer out the door when you've lost, you know, a good 25% of your business over the last year or so, with not being able to get into licensees, makes life a bit challenging. So there we stand. Mm.
Well, yeah, and I've been paying attention to like traffic on patios, and even though we're allowed now, they're not as busy as they should be.
They're not, and I think a big part of it is you're going to see. I don't know if you're going to get that full rebound. I really don't. You know, I mean, people have been laying low. I know. I mean, I can speak for myself, and I can, you know, I won't speak for anybody else because that's just silliness. But I mean, you're at home, and you get used to being at home, and then we've been told for the last year and a bit to stay away from people, like social distance, keep your distance, keep away from people. And I mean, some of us have been waiting for this moment. Like it's just like, you know, but I mean but coming back to it again, like all of a sudden we're allowed on patios, but there's a bit of a, I don't know if a fear factor is the right word, but there's definitely some trepidation to the whole thing. So you know, I talk to my friends in the bar and restaurant world, and they're you're right. They're saying that people aren't coming back as fast as they thought they were going to.
Yeah, yeah, and I know when we first reopened, there were a lot of restaurant and bar owners where I'm not jumping in real quick and ordering everything in, because
Right.
what happens if the government does another 360 on us again?
Well, they got burnt a couple of times now, you know,
Yeah,
and I mean, a lot of the breweries have done a very good job of buying back some of those beers, but I
yeah,
mean, I know some of the bigger guys haven't actually bought them back. I mean, there was a couple of places up in
yeah,
Halliburton that were like, you know, I won't name names, but some of the bigger guys didn't didn't take back the kegs, didn't offer to take back the kegs, and
yeah.
you know, so you're left on the hook with this stuff. And sorry, Graham, you said location change. What location are you referring to?
Where you're just taking beer. He's wondering if consumption
Oh,
stayed level.
no, no. It's you know, I mean, there's so a big part of it too is I mean, you've got there's definitely been an increase on say the take home beer. LCBO beer store grocery has definitely increased across the board, but I mean, most breweries, when you take a look at it, they're making their dollars, they're making their margins off of kegs. You know, you don't have to pay for the packaging. You know, you can fit a whole hell of a lot more into one to a 50-liter keg or something along those lines, as opposed to you've got an aluminum can, so those margins are down. But as far as consumption goes, I think people have gotten a bit tired. There's different flavors that have hit the market. I mean, we're still, you know, not only are we still competing with spirits, big breweries and wineries, now all of a sudden you've got this RTD market that has exploded. Like the seltzers, the you know the I mean, look at what Collective Arts has done, for example, with their ready to drinks. I mean, they have been very smart about the whole thing, and have, I mean, once summer hits, once say May hits, most breweries, most beer shelves in LCBOs, they lose at least a shelf or two based on the number of RTDs they're bringing in. So you see consumption going down because again, things are thinning out a little bit.
I noticed that when I went into Woodstock to pick up my beers, that they just redid the Woodstock store to put in the big beer cooler.
Yeah.
And there is as many RTDs as there is craft beers, if not more.
Yeah. They've done a better job of making them, for starters. Like I mean, I remember you look at 10, 15 years ago, all of those RTDs were as sweet as could be. And now you're seeing stuff that's hitting the market that does have a slightly better flavor profile. It's not that over the top sugary drink. Like, I mean, I've jumped into the seltzers a little bit. I mean, you wouldn't know it. It's not my diet drink apparently, but it's supposed to be for the summer. So. So.
Well, it's new.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing a great job marketing it, and they've bought shelf space.
They have they ever?
Yep. So what do you think's been the best change in the industry because of COVID?
Oh man, I think it's the I honestly believe that it's you look at the breweries that are doing well and they've realized that they can't just get by on making beer. They actually have to reach out and engage with their customer base. And I think that's been a huge part of it. Almost every brewery has all of a sudden got an online presence. They've found ways to keep costs down in terms of, or at least some of them have in terms of shipping and stuff. Whereas before, I mean, you could be paying shipping rates that were as high as the beer that you were buying. So I think a big part of that has been really good for the industry. There has been I think a refocus on creativity. I think just before things had gone south, breweries were just kind of following each other around, and I still see that in the industry. But I think that you get a few of the breweries that are doing exceptionally well are following their heart, for to take a stab at being poetic about this. They're doing what they set out to do as opposed to just following whatever trend is coming along. And I think that you'll also see that the ones that are doing the opposite of that are still just following trends and hoping for the best, are the ones that aren't being successful with it right now.
You touched a little bit on what I was going to ask you next, which is that has COVID changed the message that brewers are putting out, and have they changed how they've got their message out to people?
It's hard to answer the question like this without being very specific about it. And I will not be negative about any one brewery, but I will say some breweries that are out there have done a god awful job of getting their message across. They have hired somebody that has been a social media influencer, marketer, whatever term you want to use, and you get you all see it if you're on Instagram or anything else. You see the messages that come across that you just scroll past because hey, weekend's here, come have our beer. Like, who fucking cares, to be honest with you? Like, I'm not excited about that. Like, give me something to be excited about. Talk to me. What is the message of your brewery? Yes, I want to know what new beers you have out, but I also want to know what else that you're doing and how you're engaging with your customers. And instead of just trying to, track your Facebook likes or whatever the case may be. I don't know. I'm old. I don't know how most of the stuff works, but I do enjoy the engagement with breweries. And again, I mean, I focused on these guys last time, and I will always focus on them because I think they're doing a phenomenal job. Collective Arts does an amazing job of getting their message across. You know who they are, you know what they are, you know where they're putting their dollars. You know that they're engaging in social messaging. They're backing Black Lives Matter. They're backing the indigenous message. They are. You take a look at the messaging that's coming across right now, and to me, not everybody needs to, not everybody needs to be a social warrior out there, but everybody needs to be speaking from their heart in terms of what they're doing, as opposed to just throwing their beer on a patio chair and saying, "Come buy my beer."
Collective Arts does a great job of creating community.
1000%.
You know,
Wherever
beer?
they are.
which beer are we going to tackle next?
Well, we'll stay within that. We'll stay within the family. So I'm going to jump into the Muse Saison. So from um, as any growing pains in a family goes, eventually somebody has to fly the coop and go to the nest and try their own thing. And Misha at one point decided that it was time to move on, and he really had this idea of starting a barrel program. And he is so tied to Belgium style beers, and I'm so glad that he is, because he's kicking ass at it. And so him and his partner, whose name is eluding me at the moment, she's a wonderful woman. They decided to start Muse Brewing. And again, they are just outside of on the other side of Scotland, if there is another side of Scotland. Scotland's not real big, but they are along Highway 24, and they originally started in New Limburg, brewing there and helping Joe get up to speed on getting his chops on brewing the New Limburg stuff, so that they could keep that project going. And the first one that they released into the LCBO is called Saison de la Muse, and it's very much a classic saison. Again, it comes down to the yeast. The yeast in this case is for most saisons. If you're having a proper saison, you're going to have a really peppery tone to it, and that comes from the yeast. It's supposed to be refreshing. It's supposed to be low in alcohol, because the saison was originally for the farm workers, and that's how they were feeding them through the day, is throwing them a bunch of beer that they could drink while they were harvesting. And God love them. If I'm working in Norfolk County on a farm, I hope to God someone's throwing me some of this beer, because it's a hell of a way to get you through your day. But again, it's not sweet. It's a very complex beer, but it's very simple at the same time. It's very rare that you can find a beer that drinks so well, but yet has this very peppery tone to it. And the sweetness is still there, but it's the malts really come forward for such a nice light beer. And Misha, actually, Muse won gold best in show at last year's Ontario Craft Brewers Awards for I believe it was for their cuvee, but their cuvee rouge, actually, which is one of the beers you can only get at the brewery. And I'm fortunate enough, their brewery is 20 minutes away from my house, so anytime I want to part with $20, I can just go and pick up one of their bottles, which is it's a good way. It's a good way of doing things. So no, they're doing a great job. They've just opened up their own space, and I think that everything they do is done with care. It's all small batch stuff. Most of it's barrel aged, and all of it deserves to be tried. So it's if you're heading down Highway 24 from Brantford, you'll pass the lights at Oakland Road, and there's two places within 5 minutes of each other that just popped up there within the last year. And on the right hand side, past the lights, you'll see a little farm stand, and it's the Muse farm stand. And just down the road from there is where their little brewery is. So I think they're open a couple of days a week. They just opened their patio, and around from the corner from there is Flux Brewing, which I had the thought of going completely local with these beers tonight, and Flux would have been on that list, but I wanted to see if I could throw stuff out there that was in the LCBO. So maybe we'll do Flux a different day, Bill.
Maybe you and I are going to have to meet up at Muse.
Oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So I get a bit of a almost funky earthy tone in this.
Yep, that is. If I'm not mistaken, and I could very well be. Let me read the back of this just to see if I am. I feel like there's some bread in there, but it doesn't say. So,
Could be the type of malt that he's using too.
very much so. Yeah. It's having the conversations with. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to have a conversation with Misha. He's
I haven't
very
met him. That's why I'm going to meet you there.
right. Fair enough. He is getting answers out of him is difficult. He's very much a brewer.
Yep.
You know, he says as few things as possible and lets his beer speak for itself. So but you're right. I mean, and that's a part of that whole those what are considered farmhouse beers like the saisons and some of
Yeah.
the table beers do tend to have a bit of that funkiness to it because a lot of the times it's from wild yeast in the brewing process. So some of that is going to come through with whatever is picked up in the barrels as well.
Okay. Troy's got an interesting question.
All right.
He's curious if you've seen from the industry gains with the loosening of the laws last year, and yet this year the government has done basically nothing. Is it that they're hoping that we're going to go back to business as usual?
God, I hope not, Troy. I really hope not. I think that we're moving. I think that out of necessity, what's the term? It's invention out of necessity, I guess, is what I'm hoping is happening here. And I think a couple of things that you see from there is not only. I think a big part of it is the takeout beer that you're seeing at restaurants and bars is one of the big examples I see, and you're seeing places that are able to work within the law on that, but kind of skirting it. They're just, where you're opening up basically a bottle shop and, you can't take out beer unless you buy food. Well, here's your stale hickory sticks that have been sitting in the back room for, the last 5 years. They're, take those home with you. And they're able to do it at a price that, it's lower than what you're expecting to get. So I'm hoping, and I'm hoping that you're going to see more of that. There's been talk of more convenience stores actually getting into that, which I'm not 100% sold on because I think what they're looking at right now for convenience stores is stuff like 7-Elevens and those guys, but I think I think if we have a way to open up our industry to laxer laws, basically. Like, I mean, common sense laws regarding it. I mean, we're one of the most heavily regulated industries that's out there. I mean, the only ones that I look at that are actually worse are cideries and spirits. Even cannabis has, came onto the scene with better regulations in terms of privatized stores than we have. When I was out in BC, you've got a hybrid model where you've got your BC LC or whatever they call it, the same versions as the LCBO, but they've also got private stores where they had these bottle shops that were just mind blowing. Like all of the small guys were able to get in there, were able to buy beer, and that's been happening for a while now. And I mean, if we can get out of our own way, which I mean, we haven't had a government in this province who can do that, and my lifetime. So I'm not holding my breath on it, but I mean, it's regardless of how you vote, that is one of the things that has been a nice happening through all of this is that these things had to, out of necessity, be loosened up a little bit for businesses not to fail left, right, and center.
So I was going to ask what's next for Adam, but I think Adam Wilson for premier.
Sweet God, they've hated the last 4. Why would I want to do that to myself?
Valid point.
Next up for Adam, it's so I've come out of this. I mean, it's a small industry, and word gets around. If you've been around for a while, you can have some conversations fairly quickly. So I've had a couple of interviews so far, and I was having a chuckle because I got the, the $50 question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And that was asked to me yesterday, and I was like, Jesus, I don't know where I see myself next week, to be completely honest with you. Like, I know I got to pick the kids up from school at some point in time, and get them to camp and do all those things, but I have options, which is good. I've been fortunate enough to put myself in some pretty good positions over the last number of years to uh, to kind of help the resume out along and learn a lot of stuff. And I've learned from some great people. Keith being a prime example of that, and so the jobs that are out there that I'm interested in. I feel good about it. I might start something of my own. I've got a couple of ideas for some projects that I want to do. I figure if I'm going to have this much information in my head about beer, I might as well do something with it. I've learned that the instability of the industry, if I hope the next person that fires me is me, and we'll go from there.
Now that would make a great reality show.
Cheers.
Cheers, Adam. So what do you think is new and exciting in the craft industry besides a couple of things we've talked about?
I touched on it a little bit, and I think the most exciting thing for me right now is that you've got breweries that are actually, and I'm going to say this, and it's going to come across a little rude, but it's not intended to be. A lot of breweries that have stopped listening to people. They've stopped following those trends. They've stopped oh, I want to see a New England IPA. I want to see a brewed IPA. I want to see a, vanilla stout. I want to see it. And I've started actually just, what did we start this for? And what do we want to do? And, so you're starting to see some breweries like Muse, for instance, that just is making beer because they love the styles that they make. And it's the old Field of Dreams line: build it and they will come. Like, if you do it properly, they will definitely be there. And I mean, I'm going to say this with as much respect as I can, and it's really not intended to be a slight, though it is a slight on the company. I look at what has happened with Bose over the last couple of years, and I mean, I love Bose. I love Bose. I love the people that work at Bose. I love the beer that comes out of Bose. But I also think that what Bose did 4 or 5 years ago, when they were doing all the different beers and stuff, they were doing that from the heart. They were doing that from, this place of, look how fucking cool this beer is. And I mean, honest to God, like, I would walk into a meeting and it would be, look how cool this fucking beer is. Like, it was literally that. So I mean, and now, things changed a little bit and trends started being followed instead of being the trendsetters. So I mean, they're still making wonderful beer. Lugtred is still one of the best beers that is out there in that pocket of what it is. But I think that, to see a company like, say, Small Pony, that jumped on their barrel program, and they're like, I'm going to make the weirdest shit possible, and either you guys are coming along and going to enjoy it, and Full Moon, is that what they're named? They're the guys up in Seaforth.
Half Hours on Earth.
Half Hours on Earth. Thank you. Not Full Moon. That's not even close to being correct. So they're doing the same thing, though. But I mean, it's the same ideas. They're doing what they want to do. They're doing what they want to do for them, and they're not sitting there following a bunch of trends. So I think, to me, if we're going to look at the stuff that I'm excited about, it's seeing these breweries that are out there just attacking what they want to do.
Half Hours on Earth is an interesting pair. I knew them from Kickoff because they went to University of Waterloo.
Yeah.
I asked them to be on the show, and I got the politest rejection letter I have ever had. And it's just, awesome. We're having a hard enough time, Bill, just handling our own social media. The concept of having a Zoom call scares us.
You guys aren't too scary. I mean,
Well, no,
Yeah.
but
That's
it
awesome.
was the politest rejection I ever had. They were so happy I reached out to them, but it was like, nope, we're not doing this.
And that's amazing. I mean, and obviously, like, know your wheelhouse. Like,
Mhm.
if you ask me to walk into a brewery and start brewing beer, I'm going to recommend not drinking it, any of you. But if you ask me to get in front of a microphone and talk to people about beer, I'll do it all damn day. Like, it's I love doing it. My wife is tired of hearing it, and it's but that's why I like doing things like this, because you guys don't know me and you can stand to listen to me talk about it over and over again.
So I'm curious, Adam, with the depth of knowledge that you have, understanding of beer, the process of brewing, why you're not brewing.
Oh, that's out of left field, isn't it?
I warned you.
I tried it. I'll be honest with you. Number one, I tried it with my father-in-law a few times, and then I actually worked as an assistant brewer for a company out in BC called Trading Post. And to put it simply, I'm awful. I don't have the um, I don't have the focus that you need to be a brewer. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you need to pay attention to. It's not just the coolness of, hey, how does this malt go with this hop, go with this, it's, am I cleaning things right? Am I getting, pHs right? There's so much stuff that happens there. You can't walk away for a minute. And I'm one of these 2,000 feet above earth guys kind of looking at it all. And that's why I work well in sales, because they don't actually, the devil's in the details when it comes to brewing. And um, it's just, I learned very quickly that as much as it would be super cool to be a brewer. Everybody loves brewers, but I'm not it. It's not me.
That's a perfectly valid observation on your part,
No,
because the devil is in the detail when you're brewing beer.
it's knowing, it's I never want to be constrained by my limitations, but I also want to be very much aware of them as well.
Yeah. So which beer we're going to go to next?
We're going to go to the one that's probably the most well known of the bunch that we're doing. We're doing the Side Launch Wheat. So Side Launch is out of Collingwood. They have been around, God, I don't know. How long have they been around now? 6 years now or something along those lines?
I was going to say 7, but I could be
Yeah.
off by one.
So let's say 6.5 then. All right. Well, but I mean, they came onto the market with a splash. They their first year in, they actually won the Canadian Brewing Awards Brewery of the Year. I think it was Canadian Brewery, wasn't it, or it might have been Ontario, but they ended up winning Brewery of the Year. And those in the industry have they know it's easy to kind of play that system a little bit in terms of if you're putting stuff into, say, IPAs or lagers or things along those lines, it's harder to get those votes and get those wins. But if you can find a few of those categories that not a lot of people are putting beers in, you can get those gold medals, which is kind of how they base the night's win for Brewery of the Year. But Side Launch lived up to some of the beers that they were making. They're not going to be the exciting beers that you're going to get at some of these other breweries like the Bellwoods and Small Pony and Barn Cat, stuff like that. But Mike Hancock makes solid beers, and he's always made solid beers. And I happened to be on a panel, not on a panel, but part of a discussion with Mike and Matt O'Hara and, oh shit, there was somebody else that was there, and then Bryce, who was the brewer from the Halcyon Project at Bose at the time. So this was about 3 years ago. To sit there and listen to these giants talking about beer and just getting giddy about being in the same room with each other was super cool. So the Side Launch Wheat to me is one of these classic summer style beers. I can drink a million of them and not get tired of it. There's an easy drinking quality to it, and to me it goes to the fact that people get caught up in the craft world. They get caught up into what's big, what's new, what's next. And every once in a while, you have to take a step back and be like, "Oh shit, I really just like drinking beer." And to have one, a beer like this wheat, um, after say mowing the lawn, this is a lawnmower beer for me. And I think it's important in the context of seasonality. Is am I going to drink a bunch of these in the winter? Probably not. But during the summertime, a good barbecue and more than a few of these guys are going away. You're going to, it's, as far as wheats go, again, it's almost like a wheat light. A typical wheat, you're going to get that big banana, big clove off the nose, and you get some of that. It reminds me closer to a filtered version of Hoegaarden, for those that remember when that was back in the market. But it's a lovely beer. So cheers.
Cheers. It's a classic wheat beer, that's for sure.
It really is. Like, it's just so smooth drinking. That's what every time I have a wheat, I'm like, oh yeah, right. This is really smooth. There's just that wonderful, easy drinking mouthfeel to it that kind of coats the tongue on the way down. That is really nice.
Yep. Graham makes a point that let's hope that they allow breweries to have an ice cream truck program, just draft beer driving up and down the streets.
I will. I think that would be a wonderful new addition to things.
Here's your ice cream cone and your beer.
Why can't they be the same?
You'd never stop wanting to mow the lawn. You just go out there every day.
Why is that thing so burnt and patchy? Never you mind.
I'm curious. What music would I find on your playlist right now?
Mm-hmm. I'm an alt country kind of guy. I do love me some Jason Isbell these days. I think he is a wonderful songwriter, and he's his storytelling is phenomenal. There is nobody that touches things for me like Steve Earle. Steve Earle has been my go-to guy for an awful lot of years. I've had an opportunity to meet him on 5 different occasions now. I never get tired of it. He is absolutely wonderful with what he does in the field. He's not afraid to experiment. He just lost his son to a drug overdose last year, Justin Towns Earle, who is also an artist in his own right, and he had turned around and made a tribute album of his songs, and it was just like, well, shit, you got this figured out, don't you? So, it's a lot of those guys. There's what else am I listening to? I'm all over the place. I'm in this music group. So there's this group that my wife went to high school in Tennessee, and they've maintained some friendships, and one of them works for Sony, and they're all kind of music geeks, and they're all kind of all over the place. So we do this game where every couple of weeks we put in like 5 songs, and what we're trying to do is put in 5 songs that you think nobody else has heard before. And so you throw these songs in, and then we all vote on them. And if you've heard the song before, you can't vote on it. So most votes over the course of this, the game wins. And so for me, it's gone from being this thing where I love Jason Isbell and I love Steve Earle too. Fuck, I just heard 40 new people in the last week, and it's kind of lost on me what I actually love. But some of the local guys that I love, there's Julian Taylor just won a Juno for his album. He's a pretty phenomenal songwriter. John Showman, who's one of the absolute best fiddle players there is in this country. He's a Toronto-based artist. Michael O'Grady, who is one of the members of the Mahones, but he's also happens to be my best friend, so I'll plug him anytime I talk about music. And there's very few tin whistle players in the world that compare to him. These are all, it's the indie stuff, and it's the roots music that typically gets me going. Unless I'm at Keith's house and then put on as loud music as you possibly can with 3 chords and the truth. Isn't that right, Keith?
Yes.
I'm gonna say, man, that must be something when you and Keith get together. Whose music's gonna win?
I think we both went last time. I was up there, Keith gave me one of his own CDs, and I listened to it on the way home. And I mean, you know, it's music's music. Like there's fantastic stuff out there. I mean, there's absolute garbage, but you know, it's kind of like making beer. If you can make music from the heart and you're not trying to impress anybody, three chords and the truth, Graham. Then you know you're right on. You're right on track. So
So your wife went to high school in Tennessee.
she did. Yeah, her
How did you
dad.
guys? How did you guys meet?
Um,
Or is that a story we can't
no,
record?
no, we totally can. So, my wife is a vet tech, and she was a vet tech in Toronto. And for a hot minute, I was married back when I was 30 to somebody who's not my wife. And we took our animals to the veterinarian that my wife worked at, and I don't remember her from there, so that's a terrible part of the story. But apparently she had a bit of a crush on me, which I mean, look at me, how could you not? Really, look at this face. Anyway, we years later we was divorced from my first wife, and I was played a gig in Toronto, and her boss had basically invited the entire crew out, and they came out, and I met her, and I was just like, well, yes, let's spend the rest of my life hanging out with you. And that was 13 years ago or so. And at least one of us hasn't regretted it. I'm not sure about the one upstairs, but I'm pretty solid on all of it.
Yeah, that's a comment most guys make.
Yeah. Yeah. No, two wonderful children later, and here we are.
Yeah, I've only ever done one thing right in my life, and that was marry you. And I'm not sure how I managed that.
I don't want to. I don't want to be part of any club that'll have me as a member. Oh, come on, Graham. That was awful. All right.
So now you've got me intrigued. What instrument do you play?
I play guitar. Not well, but I play it. Yeah, I was one of these pub guys. You know, a million and one songs, and you know, you let me know what you want me to hear, and I'll play it. And as the years gone by, you can make a request, and I won't necessarily give it back. I will just kind of play what I want to play at this stage of the game. You know.
So you see, you are a politician. I like that. Who's your role model, or who played the most influence in your life?
Oh Jesus, my brother. Yeah, my big brother. He's it's funny you say that. He's him and I have had we're 3 years apart. Love hate relationship growing up, and then he went over to Norway during my teenage years, and when he moved back, the two of us were thick as thieves. And he's been in Oakville the last 21 years raising his family, and I've been down in Port Dover, and actually this week he's moving back east to Nova Scotia. So I was just down there over the weekend, and you need. I think it's important to have somebody in your life that you can, whether it's about looking up to or whether it's just about being able to have conversations with that allow you to be as forthright with yourself as you possibly can be. And I think that my big brother has done that for me.
So he's moving to Nova Scotia for work, or is he moving back to Nova Scotia to be back in Nova Scotia?
Well, no, he doesn't need to go back for work. He works for he sells franchises actually. So the head office of the company that he works at is out in Edmonton. So I mean, he can work wherever he wants to work. But
Yeah.
our folks are getting a little bit older. His oldest kid's entering into university, and he's going to be down to Acadia in the fall in Wolfville, Nova Scotia. And both of the boys play competitive basketball, so there was an opportunity for that, and getting a little bit closer to family, and to being able to buy a house at half the price that you can buy up in Ontario is also probably
So he's moving to Wolfville, is he?
He's moving to Falmouth, and if anyone's ever heard of Falmouth in this group, you're getting there. You go, Troy. Nice, you get extra points
Yeah.
on this round, buddy. It's kind of my mom is down near Kentville, and my dad's in Halifax, so he's kind of landed smack dab between the two of them. So
I'm gonna say I've been through it, and it's in the
no
middle
one
of
stops there. It's,
middle of the nowhere.
but there's a couple of good breweries down there now, apparently.
Yes, there are.
Schoolhouse Brewery, and it's right around the corner from them. And there's a couple of good ones down in the valley as well. And there's Patty's Pub, which has been a brew pub down there for ages.
Could just say forever almost.
Oh, Jesus! I mean, I was living down there still when they first opened. And they make probably the best blueberry ale I've ever tasted. So.
Yep. Pump House in Moncton gives them a run for their money.
Yeah,
But,
fair enough. Fair enough.
But I would still say they're probably just that much better.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to be in New Brunswick to drink the other ones. Why would you want to do that? It's like
That's true.
The old joke from Nova Scotia is, what's the worst part about Nova Scotia? The drive through New Brunswick.
My wife would agree with you on that one. She hates that drive.
It's terrible.
Anyways, let's talk about the last beer.
All right, last beer is to me, it's weird to call it a classic of the style because the style hasn't really been around for a long time in the province. But Bench Brewing's Balls Falls Session IPA. I don't think, in my humble-ish opinion, that there is anybody that comes close to matching how good this beer is for its style. It drinks like a proper West Coast IPA. It doesn't have that thinness that you get in most session IPAs. It's not overly, the balance isn't off between the hops and the malts, which typically to get a session IPA, you have to bring down the malt bill to bring the alcohol down. Because you got to bring those sugars down a bit. You've got to use a yeast that won't fluctuate quite as high. So typically, what happens is that you get this one-sided beer that is all hops. And I mean, I'm all for a forward hop beer, but when there's no balance to it whatsoever, it puts me off. And there's very few of them that do it well. And I find that the Bench does it incredibly well. You don't feel like you're drinking, what is it, 4% or whatever the case may be for this guy. 4.5. So it's on the high end of the session IPA, but it's I mean, for a beer that drinks like it's 6.3 full body, you get those nice citrusy papaya, pineapple, all that kind of stuff is hanging out in there. And I absolutely adore this beer from down Niagara way. And I mean, if you've been down to the brewery, I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous down there. They have done a phenomenal job. Tucked away in the middle of nowhere, and the fact they sell beer out of, not only like during the pandemic, I was there and they were actually selling their to-go beer at the front of the church, the old church that was there, and it's phenomenal. It's one of those breweries that it's a destination. You got to go for an afternoon and hang out. But cheers.
Cheers. So can you share with us the best advice you've ever been given?
No.
Okay.
No,
we'll go on to the next question.
And it's funny, for somebody who talks as much as I do, I think one of the best pieces of advice, which I clearly don't listen to, is it's better to shut up and be thought a fool than open your mouth and prove it. And I find that I prove that one wrong all the friggin' time. But I do like that one. The one that I tell my kids all the time, and the one that I actually try to hold true to as much as possible, is whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're always going to be right. And to me, it's one of those. things that's a reminder that the only, you can do anything you absolutely want if you get out of your own way. Did somebody get the same advice last week? That's awesome.
I had Kat on from Short Finger Brewing.
That's amazing.
She's very outspoken, but her advice was shut up. Yeah.
Yeah, just shut the hell up. Yeah, no, it's amazing. There's a thing there's in the sales world. I mean, and it doesn't matter which area of sales you're in. Is stop when somebody says yes or somebody says no. Stop selling. Just stop. Like, they've said yes. You got it. You're good. Walk away. Like, But most of us tend to keep going, as I do here.
Derek's a little concerned because no one has ever said drink more beer as advice.
If we have to give you guys that advice, there's something wrong here, Derek.
Are you a reader?
I was ever your guest, Bill. That's a little preview of what my advice might be.
Right? I like it. As a sales guy, I should probably be jumping all over that.
Are you a reader?
I am.
What would I find on your nightstand?
Right now, you'd find 400 Souls. It's the omnibus of the history of slavery from 1619 to present day, and it's an intense read. The last year has been kind of an eye opener, in how we treat each other. And one of the things that I've been hearing a lot of is how you hear there's very well-intentioned people out there, and it's easy to put the Black Lives Matter sticker on Facebook in the middle of everything that was going on. It's easy to put all children matter. It's easy, and these things are important and they're a step in the whole thing. But I don't think that we are going to move forward until we actually take the time to learn about it, as opposed to just taking snippets of what you're reading on Facebook or social media or wherever it is you're reading it. So to be able to take that step back, and it was one of the things that I want my children to grow up understanding the fact that it's people are people, and I'm in a very Caucasian industry. Like, there is a lot of white folks in this industry, and most of them look like this fucking guy right here. Like, it's fatter white dudes with beards. Like, there is a lot of me out there. I am interchangeable, and if I'm going to teach my child about loving everybody, and you don't have to love everybody, but I mean, just in terms of acceptance and that the only thing that's wrong is being ignorant, and that I need, if I'm going to erase that and erase my prejudices that I've grown up with in a very white culture in Nova Scotia, that I have to do a little bit more learning. So I'm sorry to get up on this pulpit and preach, but I think it's humongously important to understand it. So I made sure that if I'm going to tell my child something, I better be willing to learn about it myself, so that I'm not just sitting there, say as I do and not as I say.
I hear you on that.
So that's I mean, and I think the book previous to that was probably something by Stephen King. So,
Okay. So you're an intellectual reader.
Well, that's right. That's
No, that's good. That's good.
Whether it's it's funny because I'm very much into, especially over the last 10 years or so, is about I don't want to use the term self-help. It's not. There's it's an asinine term. It's more just the self-development and self-learning. So I mean, there's a lot of those styles of books that I'll pick up and read. Atomic Habits, and, stuff on learning proper habits and learning proper ways of doing, looking at Tim Ferriss and stuff, and just kind of figuring out better ways of actually being a better version of myself, which goes back to the, whether you think you can or you think you can, you're always going to be right. it's being finding a positivity into it, and I find that there's not a, you know, if I'm reading a couple of books or something of fiction, I'm sure that the next book that's going to be up is something that I'm actually going to take away from, to learn something from.
Okay. One last question.
One last long-winded answer.
Well, that'll be perfect for me if you give me a long-winded answer. If you could spend a day with anybody in the craft beer industry, whether you're brewing beer or experiencing beer or talking about beer, who would that be?
Keith Carmen. Keith
Got it.
Carmen.
Weirdo.
I say this with no jest, and I don't say this because the man's in the room. He is one of the most accepting, loyal, fascinating, loving human beings that I've ever met in this world, and those are the people that I want to surround myself with. And I've learned more about not only beer but being an actual decent human being from Keith. And I would. Yeah, I mean, every chance I get to hang out with Keith, I take up on it. You know, there's some wonderful people in this industry, and I'm not done meeting them. And but yeah, no, far and away, Keith is the man for me.
I can't say anything more than that, can I? I think Keith is one of the outstanding people in the industry.
It's
and I'm blessed. I'm blessed to have him as a friend.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
Well, the same applies with you guys and all of you here. Thank you guys so much. I feel the exact same way. I love you guys so much. Thank you.
The big thing about this whole pandemic that gets me is the fact that Keith isn't allowed to hug anybody. I think that's been the problem. If you've ever had a chance to meet Keith, the second you meet him, you're getting a hug, and you're not getting you're a creepy dude with long dreadlocks. No, you're getting a heartfelt love hug from that guy. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Adam, thank you for sharing your story and time with us this evening.
Bill, thank you. I always love doing this, my friend.
Well, you know, when we planned this, it was going to be a different show, but hey, you know, things happen. And I am so happy that you agreed to still continue to be on the show with me.
I am so happy that you still had me on the show.
No reason for me not to, Adam. I was having you, not a brewery.
No, I appreciate it, my friend, and thank you guys for showing up. I mean, this is awesome that you guys do this every week, and I think it's a wonderful forum for you guys to be in.
Yep. Next week, Zach Gordon joins me from Cowbell. The week after was supposed to be Side Lunch, but unfortunately, some things came up, and we'll be seeing our friends from Side Lunch in September. And Graham Spence has stepped forward and agreed on short notice to join me. The week after that, Nick from Beer Lab is going to join us. And on Friday this week, I am brewing beer on a collab with not only Marvin Dick from Wellington Brewery, but Eric Bolton is going to be joining us. And we're going to make his sour beer for him. And we will be doing a release show on the 10th of August before I head to the East Coast. So once again, Adam, thank you. I truly appreciate you giving us the gift of your time.